Yo, what's up, guys? My name's Adam. This is Adam B. Ballin. This is my channel here where I talk about basketball, where I play some NBA 2K. Um, and it's really just a basketball based channel where I can share my thoughts and share some game clips with you guys. If you are new here, which should be just about everyone because this is a new channel, I ask that you like, comment, and subscribe if you like the video. On top of that, if I say anything that you disagree with, which I'm sure I will, please comment and tell me why I'm wrong. I think that could be a lot of fun. I love getting the differing opinions, and if I'm flat out wrong, then you guys should all be commenting a lot of the same things. Um, if I had to guess what I'm wrong about, it would be my Boston Celtics and the potential that I see in them that a lot of other people maybe don't. Um, but outside of that, man, I think this play-in tournament has a chance to be super interesting. Um, there's some awesome storylines to follow, and it could create some really cool matchups in the first round of the playoffs. So, without any further ado, let's jump into it. Let's see. Where should we start? Um, East. Let's start out West. I mean, obviously, the most entertaining part of this play-in is going to be the Lakers versus the Warriors, the LeBron versus Steph Curry matchup in that play-in game tomorrow night, right? So, um, I mean that's nutty. Between LeBron and Steph Curry, they've won what is it now? 5 out of the last 6 championships. Would have been 6 out of 6 if KD or Clay didn't get hurt. Just one of them. Yeah, so to see these guys playing a play-in, this is exactly what the the hope of a tournament like this would be, as far as excitement level. I don't think anybody had hoped that the reigning champs would fall to 7, um, but that's the type of season it was. A lot of injuries with the compacted schedule. A lot of players out that weren't injured just due to COVID protocol. Maybe they went and got a haircut at the wrong place at the wrong time. A lot of teams' records don't necessarily reflect um, how well they could do um, in the playoffs themselves. But more than that, a lot of these teams' records just reflect how well they followed protocol this season, right? Um, yeah, man. So obviously, the number one storyline here is going to be the Lakers versus the Warriors here. Um, and being that LeBron's coming off an ankle injury, I think there's a chance, a good chance, that the Warriors could take this game. In a series between these teams, I would obviously take the Lakers if healthy. Um, but in a one-off game, the way Steph Curry's been playing lately, I think it's reasonable to say that the Warriors could secure the 7th spot. Um, and if that happens, I think that creates some really interesting matchups. But before I get into that, let me just touch on the Memphis Grizzlies, who are a super interesting storyline to watch here. If you can recall back to last year's play-in tournament, um, it was initially brought into effect because the season was cut short, and there were a lot of teams that felt like they could have made the playoffs if given the chance and if they had to finish the season as planned, right? So the league said, "Hey, we'll do this play-in tournament. If you're within 3 games of that 8 spot, I think it was just the 8 spot last year. If you're within 3 games of this 8 spot, we'll give you a chance, an uphill chance to make the playoffs. And if you're sitting in the 8 spot, um, we'll stack the odds in your favor. But if you lose a couple games in a row, you could find yourself out of the playoffs." So that's exactly what happened, and the Memphis Grizzlies, who were sitting in the 8 spot, found themselves out of the playoffs due to miraculous performance after performance after performance from Damian Lillard, who this year made sure he was not sitting in the play-in tournament, right? Because he knew the comeback, the payback was coming, right? So um, that's super interesting to watch. The Grizzlies, if they can steal a playoff spot, they'll have to take it from either LeBron James or Steph Curry. If they do that, you know, 9 out of 10 nights, the Memphis Grizzlies are on Ja Morant's back. So for them to steal a playoff spot, I think it would take a very memorable performance from him, one for the books, right? So, but back to the 7 and 8 seeds. Um, if the Warriors are able to steal the 7 and the Lakers get bumped to 8, and they hold off the Memphis Grizzlies, which realistically, if the Lakers get bumped to 8, I don't see them losing to the Memphis Grizzlies. That creates some good matchups. For starters, you would have the Warriors at 7 versus the Phoenix Suns at 2. There's levels to this one, man. So the Chris Paul versus Steph Curry dynamic is layered. You know, Curry grew up a Chris Paul fan. They're both from North Carolina, as am I. And I, you know, Chris Paul was kind of like a mentor to Steph Curry. Steph Curry went to a lot of Chris Paul's camps, and it's believed, the story goes, that they were friends up until Curry started kind of busting his ass, right? So, for lack of a better term, they were friends until Curry started killing him. So, you know, now on top of that, they are both front runners for this MVP award, which typically isn't announced until after the first round of the playoffs. So, you know, I know what they all say, all the people that vote on MVP, we don't factor in the playoffs, we don't factor in the playoffs. But if the two people you were thinking about voting for play against each other in the first round, and one of them clearly outplayed the other, I think that would go into your decision-making process. So there could be some MVP implications out of this matchup, no matter what the voters say goes into the decision-making process, which I can't even keep up with how they decide who's MVP anymore, right? But whatever. They should really just give it to whoever had the highest PER for the year and played over 35 minutes. But then Steph wouldn't have won it that unanimous year because he only played, I think, 31 minutes a game or something like that. But you get what I'm saying. I mean, PER is a pretty good estimation of how you're playing, and, you know, true shooting percentage could go in there. I think it's already in there. But anyway, back on topic. If the Warriors secured the 7th spot and bumped the Lakers down to the 8th spot, that would put LeBron James against the team that he subtly dissed at the All-Star selection process, right? So, if you guys recall, there were a few players left on the board. LeBron goes, I need someone big, I need someone big, I need someone big. And Rudy Gobert was on the board, and he goes, can't remember who he said, but they were not big. Not big like Rudy Gobert. And everyone kind of busted out laughing, and his response was, growing up, we never picked the Utah Jazz in video games. Which I think what he was talking about is, in video games, the best teams were, I think he's talking about that Bulls era, where it was the Bulls and the Jazz, that Stockton Malone team. No one ever picked them in video games, right? And I can't remember who the other person, I think it was Kevin Durant, and they both just started laughing, right? And he said, yeah, no, we never picked them in video games. So, but it was funny that he said, I need someone big, and then left Rudy Gobert on the board, and justified it, right? With a reason outside of basketball. Hey, I'm not picking you because of something that happened 30 years ago in video games, right? So I'm thinking Utah might have taken that personally, and now LeBron might see them in a 7-game series wherein 4 of the games could be in Utah. So that is definitely a storyline to watch. So out west, we've got obviously the Lakers versus the Warriors as the main storyline to watch. The Memphis Grizzlies, their chance at redemption. After giving up their playoff spot last year, they've got a chance to steal one from either Steph Curry or LeBron James this year, which could be crazy, which could be really big, and it would require a big game from Ja Morant, I'm assuming. And then we've got the matchups that could be created there. You've got the Lakers versus Suns would be interesting, LeBron versus CP3 matchup, but really that Lakers versus Jazz after the All Star thing would be pretty funny, and a Steph CP3 matchup, or let's call it a rematch, would be awesome to see. Last time they met in the playoffs, um, it went 7 games, and Chris Paul was hurt for Game 7. A lot of people think that they had a chance, that they would have won if Chris Paul was not hurt. Um, I believe that's the game where they missed like 20 something threes in a row to lose. Um, but Chris Paul was hitting Steph Curry with his little shimmy dance at half court. So yeah, I think a lot of people would love to see that rematch. So those are the best storylines to watch out west coming from the play-in tournament. Now let's take a trip out east. First things first, let me just do my Celtics rant. They lost 5 out of 6 from the moment that this guy got hurt. I can't tell if y'all can see this. From the moment Jaylen Brown got hurt, they lost 5 out of 6 and ended the season. So they very much could have taken that Miami spot. They possibly could have tied Atlanta or New York if they didn't play like trash to close the season. But now, here we are, right? So, as it currently stands, the Celtics versus the Nets in the first round, Kyrie versus Kemba in the first round, Kyrie versus the Celtics in the first round. However you want to phrase it, that's a storyline. Kyrie coming back to Boston, right? Not to mention some statements he made at the beginning of the year before they brought in James Harden. Kyrie was talking about how more than anything he wanted a one-on-one matchup with Kemba Walker. Apparently they're both from the same little area in New Jersey. They've been playing against each other for a long time, wherein Kemba Walker, Kyrie called him Big Bro, and said that he'd score 40 on Kemba, Kemba would score 40 on him. He wants that one-on-one matchup. So that is a storyline for sure, especially after Kyrie left Boston and all that. So something to watch for sure. Now, if the Wizards were to win the play-in game against Boston tonight, which is coming on in about an hour, that would be very, very interesting, and it would create some really good first-round matchups. For starters, it would put the Wizards in the 7th spot, and we would get to see the KD versus Russell Westbrook matchup that we have all been waiting for. I think they've played each other, 4 or 5 times since they split up. Probably more than that, honestly, and I'm underestimating it. But with injuries and stuff, I really think it's only been 4 or 5 times. And we could get 4 or 5. I mean, we'll get at least 4 games in a series. And I think it would get chippy. Not to mention, Westbrook could be looking at this as, James Harden and KD teaming back up. They just replaced me with Kyrie, and they think they're going to go to the finals. You know what I mean? James Harden and Westbrook were just playing together last year, and it didn't work out. There could be some leftover animosity there. I'm not sure that Russell Westbrook wanted to end up in Washington. I think James Harden might have had something to do with that. So, there's talks about the power that James Harden had in the front office over there and the situation he left them with and blah, blah, blah. So, there's a lot of different motivating factors for Russell Westbrook if they match up against the Nets, right? A lot of familiar faces on the other end. Let's see, which would put the Celtics up against the Sixers unless Indiana beats them. If Charlotte was healthy and had Gordon Hayward and all that, they'd have a better chance. But without a lot of their best players, LaMelo being hurt and then coming back just in time for the playoffs, that's tough. But if the Wizards push the Celtics to the 8th spot, and the Celtics can hold the 8th spot, that Philly matchup's interesting. if you recall, last year in the bubble, the Sixers were in a similar situation to what the Celtics are in right now. They were playing without one of their best young players in Ben Simmons. And the equivalent to that for the Celtics would be playing without one of your best young players, Jaylen Brown. When the Sixers ran into the Celtics in the bubble, they got swept. 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 So if you're the Celtics and you meet up with the Sixers in the playoffs without Jaylen Brown, my advice is just don't get swept. Right? Just don't get swept. It's pretty simple. Just don't get swept. Yeah, just don't get swept. Just don't get swept. I even think they could win this series against Philly, or against Brooklyn. Not as much Brooklyn. No, not Brooklyn. But when I explain why I think they could beat Philly, if they're firing on all cylinders, they could beat anybody. So this is my little Celtics rant that a lot of people are going to disagree with, but here it comes. With Jaylen Brown out, that opens up, let's say, 20 shots for other players on the team. Tatum doesn't necessarily need more shots. He already gets the most shots. Who does that open up shots for? Let's say you throw Tatum an extra 3 or 4 shots a game. You throw Kemba an extra 8 to 10 shots a game. You throw Evan Fournier an extra 5 or 6 shots a game. Peyton Pritchard, Carson Edwards, Romeo Langford, more minutes. Guys that have come in off the bench as of late and hit some big buckets. Take Carson Edwards out of that mix. Romeo Langford and Peyton Pritchard are some serious young talent. I like what I see out of those guys, and I could foresee some big playoff moments from them. But, I'd still rather see Philly than Brooklyn, even though Philly's the 1 seed and Brooklyn's the 2 seed. If Brooklyn was healthy all year, they probably would have only lost 10 games. And if Harden started the year there. Because they really got it together once Harden got there. So, I don't think Brooklyn's record is a very good testament to the talent they have. I would much rather run into, if I'm Boston, or if I'm any team for that matter, I'd much rather run into Philadelphia than Brooklyn. But, Kemba Walker is playing better than he's played since he put on a Boston jersey the last couple months. I think he's finally getting comfortable, and it's really unfortunate that Jaylen Brown went down right when he did, because it seemed like they were just kind of starting to get things together, where Kemba and Jaylen Brown, where Tatum and Jaylen Brown were doing their thing, and Kemba was helpful. Typically, when those guys started cooking, Kemba would just disappear. I don't think he's used to not being the first option, which took a serious adjustment period. It's similar to, the growing pains that kind of what Carmelo went through on a different scale. Melo was a more talented player, but, Kemba, all-time leading scorer in Charlotte, he kind of had been handed the keys for a while and could do what he wants, shoot when he wants, shoot what he wants. And it took a big adjustment for him. So I think he's finally settling in. I think he's playing the best basketball he's played since he's put on a Boston jersey. And I think he's going to get a lot more shots now that Jaylen Brown is out. He's got a chance to prove some people wrong that have written him off. So Kemba Walker is definitely a storyline to watch with more shots. And that's basically going to do it. If the Indiana Pacers had a chance to steal the 7, which they do not, that would be interesting. The Karis LeVert trip back to Brooklyn, who they had to let go to sign James Harden. That could have been really cool. But that's not possible, so that's really it for the East. You've got the Celtics versus Kyrie, potentially. You've got the Celtics versus Philly, potentially, and Philly's Philly can get their payback for getting swept by Boston without one of their best players by catching Boston without one of their best players. Um, and then the best storyline in the East is obviously if the Wizards can steal that seventh spot and we get 4 or 5 games, maybe 6 games, 4 or 5 games of um, Westbrook versus Kevin Durant and James Harden. Now, um, while I would obviously take Brooklyn in that series, it is interesting because Brooklyn don't play any defense, you know, especially at the 1 and 2 spot. Kyrie and James Harden having to guard Westbrook and Brad Beal, that's bad. That is a recipe for a 5 or 6 game series. Seriously. Um, Now, Westbrook and Brad Beal don't have much help, but they're both known for kind of making the players around them better. So, um, and I think Westbrook hears a lot of the hate going on around him right now. People trying to discredit what he's been doing for the last, well, really his whole life, um, because he hasn't won an NBA championship. Um, when if you really look at it, these NBA championship teams have become so inorganic at this point, um, that it's unfair to knock players for not winning chips at this point. Because you keep knocking them, then they'll pull a Kevin Durant and go to Golden State. So, um, do you want to judge players by their rings, or do you want to judge them by their morals, or do you want guys to go out there and not compete, or do you want guys to leave it all on the floor, whether they're on a winning team or a losing team? What do you want? You know, let's just be consistent with these guys. Um, Everyone in the NBA is a very incredible talent to get there. Um, and if you've ever won an MVP or anything like that, I mean, you're one of the 50 greatest players ever. So, um, the Westbrook disrespect has got to stop. Um, and although I am a Celtics fan, and they're about to play the Wizards here in about 30 minutes, I would not be mad if the Wizards won this play-in game tonight and locked up that 7 seed to give us a series of Westbrook versus Kevin Durant. That's all I've got, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. If there's anything you disagreed with, I I implore you to hop in the comments and tell me why I'm wrong. Outside of that, like, comment, subscribe, share, and I'll see you next time. Thanks, guys. Peace out.